So welcome everybody to this Launch and Learn session. We have for today guest Mariana Lopez. She is a product strategist at WANDR. She has over 10 years of experience building products around human-computer interaction practices using research, usability studies, and design thinking to create amazing products. She brings diverse industry knowledge across telehealth, service management, and banking verticals. Mariana is also professor in user experience and has taught in several universities in Costa Rica. So welcome, Mariana, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Brenda. Thanks for that introduction. So let's get started. I'm gonna share my screen. So today's Lunch and Learn. Well, with me, hopefully you all know me. My name is Mariana Lopez, and I'm a product strategist here at WANDR. So let's start with a crash. So this is an example for one of my favorite books. If you haven't read it or you haven't heard of it, it's from Joshua Sladen. It's Outcome versus Outputs. I recommend you go out and read it. So in his example, he tells us a hypothetical scenario where our job is to create traffic safety. And we go down to the mall as good researchers and we observe the interactions between people and this intersection. And we see that people are making a left turn on a place where you can only really turn right. And then you see a T intersection here where people are supposed to stop, but they're never stopping. So as a good designer, you come up with a perfect plan. We're going to put up street signs and we're going to make sure that people know what is the appropriate behavior for them when they're driving. And you go back to your project manager and you get approval for the street signs, and you say, this is going to take this much money, this is the budget that we'll need, this is the timeline, and you go back and this is perfect, it's a genius. You execute your project, it's on time, the stop signs are perfect, they are put up in the right places, but you don't stop there. You observe if there's any behavior change in the street, and really nobody is doing anything different that they were doing before. They were still turning left on a right turn only area. They are not stopping at the intersection. And you think, well, I failed. I stuck with the project, I delivered on time, but really it's not about my outputs. It's not about me completing the project. It's that I didn't really achieve my outcome. And sometimes most of us jump really into what we're going to make. And we decide, okay, this is what's going to solve our problem. I'm going to go out and make street signs. This is the output. But we forget about our goal. We forget about what is the outcome that we wanted to do. What is the change that we wanted to create in our users' lives? And here, really, it's a very clear example of, did we make the street safer? Did we get closer to our goal? And did we just focus on the work that we had to do and went with it? And I think when we talk about metrics and we talk about leveraging metrics to improve UX, we have to keep in mind, what are our goals? What is it that we really want to achieve, and not get focused on the output of our work and not get focused on the metric. It's really about the change in behavior, the experience that you want to generate, the outcome that you want to create. And when you frame anything in the outcome or the experience that you want to generate, then it makes sense. If it doesn't, if it's in the abstract, that's where all the nitty-gritty really bad implementations of metrics come in. This is a law that I like to live by whenever we're incorporating metrics and analytics, which is when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. So a metric is a way to evaluate that we're on our way to our goal. Our metric is not the end goal. Similar to Our outputs are not what we are aiming to do. The metric is not what we're aiming to do. So if we were to say, oh, we want to increase the time our users engage with an application, it's going to be 3 minutes. And then we do anything and everything to make you be in the application in 3 minutes. We take away all your close buttons and we lock your phone. Was that really what we wanted to achieve? Was that the experience that we wanted to design for? So the metric in and of itself is not the target, it's the goal. So a little bit about metrics. This is the purpose of our conversation, and now we can start getting into it. How are we going to make metrics work for us in advocating a better user experience? We're going to take a toolbox that is typically business driven and business oriented, and we're going to adjust it and modify it to fit into the world of what we want to create and how we want to create it. How can we use signals to measure our progress towards our goal, but never forgetting what our goal is? And measuring outcomes, never outputs. And well, we talk about metrics and analytics. Metrics are really the data that you collect, and analytics are the insights that we generate from them. And we won't really get into metrics frameworks, but there's many, and I'll point you to the resources that we've been compiling together as a team to help you out after the talk, which will hopefully help a lot of you. All right, so let's talk about myths about data. When we hear metrics, some of us, or some designers who come from the world of qualitative one-on-one conversations, looking into the very deep why, we start to feel uncomfortable with data because it is quite the opposite, right? It converts everything into the big picture and forgets about that human. And so when we hear a little bit, we hear data removes the value of intuition. You're only relying on the data. And, that could happen, but in the hands of an experienced designer, it adds to the value of intuition. It can point you into something that's going wrong, and then you can validate it and you can complement it with the qualitative data, with the story, with the human behind it. Another thing that I hear often when we talk about metrics is data kills creativity and it removes art from the process. And I don't know if you've ever been on a team that does A/B testing, but if you've been on a team that does A/B testing, once an A/B test is successful, you sort of see like this world in where everything becomes A/B tested to design, and you are killing creativity in the process if you do it like that. If you let A/B testing make all the decisions for you, and you will generally end up with an application that is horrible and that nobody really knows how to use, because data does not replace creativity and does not remove art from the process. It can help inform it, it can help shape it, but definitely it cannot create the whole journey, and it cannot look at all the context that we can as humans and try to understand the humans that are trying to use our applications. Data dehumanizes because it is just numbers. And if we were to focus only on the metric and say, oh yeah, we're gonna make sure that everybody stays on the application for 3 minutes and that's it, then that is true. But when we look at data as a way to tell stories, and to tell stories at a larger scale, then actually it becomes a tool to bring out the segments and the big picture in a way that can actually bring back more humanity and can bring back more power to us that are designing the experiences. And data only focuses on narrow improvements. It's the same thing, right? Is where are you choosing to focus your data? And where are you choosing to focus the improvements that you make to your application? Data can be used for very, very specific things, but it can also be used to pivot and change your strategy completely. And I'll talk about some examples later on. And then the latter one is quantitative data is not a UXer's problem. We deal in the qualitative and we're great at the qualitative, but we don't care about analytics. And in the recent years, the UX industry has specialized, and it's great that we specialize. It's great that we say, okay, I'm really great at user interviews. I'm really great at usability testing. And there are data scientists who focus on creating and generating these analytics and these insights. The problem is when they belong to completely two different worlds and they don't talk to each other, because something might be happening over in quantitative that could help fuel your research questions or could help innovate some of the areas that your product goes into. And similarly, you could be seeing patterns and underlying themes that you might want to go out and have it validated at a large scale. And this is where, you know, talking the language of data scientists and being able to talk the language of analytics and metrics is important, because it's just one more stakeholder in the experience that we're creating. And it's just one more source of data that can generate and help us come up with better and bigger things and bigger and better experiences. So whenever for example, in Loop, I'll talk later about Loop, but in Loop, we have the product team and we have a data team. And in the beginning, it was really hard to get data and we weren't involved in it together. Sometimes getting access to Tableau, getting access to like these dashboards and analytics are limited to just specific areas of the business. And I feel, and I know that having access to that and being in conversations where you can talk a little bit about what the users are saying and what their users are feeling, and also understand the analytics, is a great way of bridging and merging the two. So when we talk about data, we talk about, you know, being data driven. So, you know, data comes back and data scientists say, if we make the product 3 times cheaper, that's going to drive sales. And product goes out and makes it out and, you know, cuts in the product and they change everything and it drives more sales, but over time, the value of the product is worse because we try to make it cheaper and the life expectancy and loyalty of our customers goes down. That's a very clear example of data driven. We made the decision with data and didn't care about the context. Data informed is a little bit where you mix and match the two, a little bit of data, a little bit of qualitative, but then you forget about the context or the larger area in which users live. And what we want to really be is data aware. We want to make sure that we grab those analytics and we put them into the service journey, into the customer journey, and we understand how they impact everything about our product. And there's a really great book if you want to go out and read it. It's called Designing with Data by the O'Reilly books. It talks about this. This graph is from there. It's amazing. So how do we set a metric? We want to use metrics as a way to measure and to gain insights and not as the goalpost. There are many metrics that you can choose from, many frameworks, but choosing the right one depends entirely on your client's unique goal. What you have to understand is, what are their goals? What is the outcome you're aiming towards? What is the experience? What is the task that this tool is supporting? And how can we set up ourselves and our users for success? What are the long-term goals of the company? For example, instead of thinking, you know, output driven, we're going to create 20 pages of wireframes to define a problem. So let's imagine, for example, we want to improve the way reservations are done. So we want to streamline reservations for an amusement park. And instead of having them call customer support, we want them to be able to do it in an application. So we go out, we build all our wireframes, and that's how we measure success, because we've built out the flow. But have we really decreased the number of customer support calls? Now people are calling because they don't understand the product. Maybe people are calling because they want custom options that weren't offered in the page. So really what we should focus on is the strategy. What is the goal here? We wanted people to stop, to be independent, to be self-serve. And have we created that, or haven't we? And you know, this is a particular close subject for me, because at Loop, we've tried to do this kind of self-serve applications, but we haven't really thought about the whole product and how we're going to onboard clients, how we're going to teach the clients to use it self-serve, and they have failed. So really, like, what is the goal and what is the metric that we're going to measure? And so a metric is measurable, movable, related to a specific goal, and not gameable. What does it mean to not be gameable? So in the end, we are trying to create experiences and not trying to move a number. So for example, if I told you we want it to be entirely self-serve and not have anybody call customer support, a great way to do that is to remove all the numbers from your website. That's it. Nobody's really calling. We achieved our metric. It's completely gameable, right? But is that really what we want? Maybe nobody's then making reservations because it's an impossible flow, right? These are extreme scenarios, but you get what I mean about not making it about the metric, because in the end, if it's only the data or if it's only the number, there's ways to work around it that don't make your users' lives better. And if you're not making your users' lives better, you're not making your business better, and regardless. And then in the middle here, you will see this little things that are called signals. And signals are like little flags or breadcrumbs along the way that let us know if we're going towards our goal, if we're going towards our metric. There are some metrics that are longer term. So say, for example, I want to measure retention and I want to measure how long somebody is using my application. If I want to measure long-term engagement, it'll be years before I can measure if I'm successful or not, because it's something that takes a while. So what are signals along the way that could help me identify if I'm moving that metric or not? So let's talk about a bad example of a metric. So in this example, and this is a little bit fictional because I don't really know what the intent behind this feature was, but let's imagine that we wanted to measure adoption and measure the number of accounts that were created in a quarter. And so we go out, we interview people, we decide, okay, we know the solution, and I will only get measured as a success if my company comes back and says, you've created triple the amounts of users from your previous quarter. And you get something like this in Instagram, where you are prompted to create a new account to stay in touch with a smaller group of friends. It worked. A lot of people created more accounts. We doubled or tripled the number of accounts in the system. But did we really achieve our goal? Did we really create a better experience that drove more people to our platform and therefore more people adopted it and we saw growth? Or is this an inflatable way of creating adoption? And truth be told, I don't know if this is what they did, why they did it. It might be because they wanted to improve the experience in some way or another. But if this is how they were measuring success, that would have been a complete failure. Let's talk a little bit about a success. And this is a really famous example. It is still Facebook. So let's talk about retention. So when we talk about retention is how many customers are still our customers after a certain period of time. And when we talk retention, usually the metric that we're looking for is the churn rate, also known as the rate that you lose customers, or the rate that customers don't come back to you. So people stop doing business with you, they stop paying your subscriptions, they stop using the application or Facebook. And it's most commonly expressed as a percentage of people that signed up versus people that are continuing to use your application. And so there's some traditional ways of measuring retention. So measuring the rate, measuring signals around retention. So measuring the rate of users that have completed their profile, measuring the rate of people that post daily. But that really wasn't what Facebook used as the best predictor or the best signal for long-term engagement. They looked at their analytics and they saw something very, very interesting. They actually used a method called behavioral cohorting, which, you know, we don't have to know how to do that. We just need to understand how a data scientist would do it to be able to leverage that and create better experiences. And they found a signal that could predict long-term engagement. It was the number of friends you add in the first days of joining your platform. And so on Facebook, they saw that adding 7 friends in the first 10 days was a great indicator of if a user will stay on the platform as a long-term user. And you can see the design implications of this, right? If you were designing that onboarding flow, you could add prompts into getting you to match up with your first 7 friends. And that's really what Facebook does. If you open a new account, they send you emails, they put you on like the strict schedule to make sure that you add in those 7 friends. And that really defines a lot of the user experience. And so when we look at metrics, signals don't imply causation, right? It is not because I've added 7 friends, not necessarily because I've added 7 friends that I will stay in Facebook, but it is a signal that could let us know, okay, this is a good predictor, and we can make this an experiment, and we can see if this is really something that will get us to the long-term engagement. And it would take many experiments for Facebook to figure out that this magic number existed, and many more to find out exactly what that number was. And I don't know if they've ever said, yes, it proves causation. If you have 7 friends, you have long-term engagement, but I don't think they care. It became such a great example of growth predictors that it's now become a very commonly used metric. If you look up the magic number, Twitter has follow 30 users, Slack has have your team send 2,000 messages. But I I get excited and I start talking about like the metrics that other people are using. But let's go back to the basics. This is a signal that implies long-term engagement and low churn rate. But we don't want to get stuck in the numbers. We don't want to become the only like, oh, that's the metric and we're going to go for it. And the next time I'm designing adoption, retention, I'm going to go find what that magic number is for my company, because it might not work in your scenario. And, you have to think about what are the implications of reaching 7 friends in 10 days? What is the user experience journey and how is it impacted by that signal that we're measuring? And if you add 7 friends, it means your newsfeed is likely to be populated with fresh content. You'll have cat videos, you'll have those baby pictures, some fake news. And then every time you log in several times a day, you're going to feel the value of Facebook, right? Which is not to be bored. So it's directly linked to their value proposition. It's directly linked to their progress. And it not only takes data into account, it understands the journey and understands the value that Facebook adds into the universe of data. And that is why it's a good signal for that application, because it was not only focused on the number, it was also focused on the journey and on the user that was using that tool. Cool. So I've given you a little bit of like big world examples and just knowledge that is out there. This next portion is smaller, a way lower scale, but I wanted to talk about something that we do here at WANDR, and it's with our client GiftNow or Loop. If for those of you that are not familiar with GiftNow, it's a way for you to send a digital gift and have it be sent to your recipient via email, via text, via print, and they can then go in and exchange their color, choose their size. If they don't like it, exchange it for a gift card. And, you don't have to know their address. You don't really have to know anything about them except their email to get them a gift, which is a great way to gift. It is also a great way to gift if you forgot it was somebody's birthday and you need it to arrive and you don't have 2 to 3 days to wait until shipping. So, enough with the product plug. This is just an example of what our UI looks like. On this side, you have the recipient side where you can choose between different gifts that somebody curated for you. And on the right side, you have an example of how you can create a gift for somebody. And you can see here, there's a way where you can select how to send it via email, via text, via link, via print. So in our product discovery meetings, our data Mike at that time, it's now Data Taylor, but Data Mike came up to us and said, well, I found this really interesting thing in our data. Our cancellation rates are so much higher if somebody selects print. they are about 3 times higher if somebody selects print. So you can see here, we have print, link, email, and SMS, a lot lower. So, you know, our product owner, Sean, you know, he's a really smart guy. And he said, well, let's just get rid of print. That's it. Well, stop our cancellations and, you know, less calls to customer support, less chargebacks. Amazing. Let's go for it. Thankfully, we had these product trios, and I raised my hand and I was, but why did they cancel? There's clear intent. I clearly went from our default option, which is email, into print. And why did they choose that? Is there a particular reason users are selecting print? Why is print behaving so much different than our other methods? And is print important for users? Are we taking away something from their experience by removing print? And they gave me time to figure that out. So we went back and we used some of our analytics tools that we have, like Full Story, and we looked at heat maps, we looked at page folds, we looked at a trajectory of somebody using the application. We found some areas of problems. We also went out and did interviews. Marlon, you raised your hand?
Yeah, can you go one slide back, please? I had a question, not this one, the other one, where you have the full story.
Oh, yes.
Yes, the middle one. Can you please explain to me what we are looking at that?
Yeah, awesome. So the middle one, what we're looking at is the page full. So what you're looking at here is typically our 70% of our users reach all the way down here. So that means 70% of our users never see the link to review and print their gift. That's crazy.
I completely missed that practically. I don't see.
Isn't that crazy? You know, I guess if you don't see the link and you don't know how to print it, you might want to cancel your gift. So we also did some interviews. We tried to understand their journey. We reviewed how they were interacting with our application, what were their expectations around print. And it was really interesting to learn that print goes up during the holiday season because it is a great way to show up not empty-handed to somebody's house. So let's say I'm late, I want to gift you a sweater and I know it's not going to get in time. I know the holidays are crazy. I don't want to go into a mall. I go in, I print the sweater, and I have something to hand you that is physical. And print was doing that for us. So if we had taken that away, we would have lost one of our value propositions. We wouldn't have had that ability to like get you something. And you know, our digital experience is amazing, but there's nothing like that tangible element to it. And so we chose 2 things to focus on and 2 things to change in our experience. The first one is this really long journey to get to the link. People were opening up our first email that would take them to manage order. And in our email, we were saying, oh, you're going to get another email that is going to get you the link to print your card. But what we were seeing is people are clicking on manage order, and then they were getting lost. Then they were, as Marlon quickly noted, they're not getting to print to the print link. And the other thing that we noticed, and this was more expectation wise in the interviews, was it doesn't really look special. It had the logo of the store that you bought it from, but it didn't have the product that you selected that you thought was going to save you, and that was going to excite the user. And then it had, you know, very confusing gift codes, just the page that you had to reach, the message that you had selected by the way that the rotation of the card was set up was, you know, completely lost for the user. So we did 2 interventions in design. We added in the print your gift button to the first email that you get. And we changed the print a little bit with a few tiny enhancements. Number 1, we added in the product. And number 2, we added in a QR code so that you didn't have to go in and type the really weird gift code. You could just follow that link. we did the same enhancements for digital gift cards. We actually added in the gift card information on the printout. And what we saw was general an improvement, a huge improvement in cancellation rates. So digital gift cards went from a 15% cancellation rate to less than 1%. And for product, the changes actually went live just like 2 weeks ago. So we still can't measure our cancellation rate, but our signals are showing improvement. Number of journeys in the support calls is looking good, and less confused people in our full story journeys, which is, you know, exciting to see. And hopefully I will report later that it's also gone down. So what I'm going to show you next is a board that I've been working on for a while. It's not only all my creation. I started working on this when I was working for a consultancy project in McKinsey. We were trying to change attitude behavior of users, but we were sort of flailing around. We didn't really have a good way to measure it. We kept failing to make impact or to prove that we made impact. And then I took this version that you're about to see, and I worked with it on a project called Decisive with a really talented product strategist called Anna Dom. And now I've taken that and adapted it to WANDR. I'm still in the process of finalizing the board. It is very much a work in progress. Devesh has helped me out a ton compiling analytics tools, and Rebecca and Kelsey have taken my very ugly board and made it amazing. And I know, Romulo, you were helping out, supervising that and reviewing that. But this is what I hope to share with you guys. It's just a template, basically stating the questions that I think are important to ask your clients when you're trying to define a metric, walking you through like the 10 steps to get a metric statement to focus on. And then this same board will have a variation of the stock that I just gave on learning about metrics, a compilation of tools that we know are available for you and that you can use, and just in general frameworks and guidance into how to talk about metrics. I will be sharing that out next week, hopefully once I finalize it, and also maybe if you're interested, be invited back into a workshop where we can use that together. That's it. If you have any questions or feedback or comment, I'm always happy for that. And I'm going to check out the chat because I stopped checking it out. All right, so that's it.
Thank you so much, Mariana. Does anyone have questions for Mariana?
Yeah, I have one. This was really interesting, by the way. I really enjoyed the presentation. And it's very often that we work with clients and their metrics sometimes, I must say, are weird, meaning that they have these very strange goals and they measure, as you said, the metric rather than what is going to be the actual outcome in the end. So how should we best educate clients as to what is the difference between an actual outcome and when the metric should be considered for success?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Marlon. And I think that's the reason why sometimes we shy away from metrics, because they give the customer a shield and they're like, oh no, I want to have higher conversion rates, or I want to have higher conversion rates is a big one for us. But
yeah, always.
but the thing is, you can always frame it in the lines of the experience. And what I found is, if you're able to make an example of where that metric would fail with a user-centric approach, then most clients will listen and will try to figure out a better metric together. So the same way that they come to us with crappy solutions, and we walk them back and we help them define the problem to get to a better solution, the same thing with metrics. They come to us with crappy metrics and we walk them back to their goal so that we can together define a better metric for the same goal that they have. So for example, conversion metrics is is a big one for us in Loop, and it's something that they measure all the time. But our clients sometimes run these campaigns, like buy one, get one off, or just like campaigns like a discount on your gift cards. And we'll see our conversion rates tank, because what they're doing is they're driving so much more traffic to our site, but they're not the right traffic. And so conversion tanks, and then they're like, what changes did you do to design to tank our conversion? And I'm like, we didn't do anything. It's the same design. It's just you're targeting the wrong users. So let's talk about a better metric here.
Yeah, it looks like you need to look at this holistically rather than focusing on just one area, or else you lose the bigger picture. Because sometimes, for example, you do a really great research and design, and you find that all of the users actually are delighted by the new experience, but you didn't hit the metric. So is that a success or not?
Mm-hmm. And I think I didn't touch upon it, but I also think that timing wise is very important. So for example, say you created a new onboarding flow, and that's amazing, but it'll take a while to see that growth, or it will take a while to see that metric actually get hit.
Yeah,
So what are the signals that we can create, or what are the signals that you can use to say, tell the client, hey, this is what we think you should be looking out for. And sometimes that intervention was not enough. There might be other things and other underlying problems that are not making you hit that metric. And that doesn't necessarily mean that your design is bad. It just means you need to look at other areas of the customer journey, and you need to figure out what is making that metric fail. Mm-hmm.
I actually have a silly question. In all this part of the metrics and having like this proposed solution with these actually data that we are getting from our users and everything, what happens when actually the metrics are too changing or are too similar? Like something wrong with the wrong user that we're like targeting, or is it what could be wrong on that one? Or actually we can have the situation of the user and everything is right, but the metrics are changing or something like that. So what happens when we have like those two situations?
Yeah, and it's not silly at all. Like, I think it's very important to understand your user base and who you're solving your problem for, because if you have a good product and you have a good metric, but you don't understand who your user base is, then it's not going to work. And similarly, like, you have to understand what the goal is that you're trying to achieve to set the right metric for your users. And typically a good metric will have a combination of that, right? It will be something that's attainable. It will be something that is directly linked to your business goals and specific for the type of customer that you're trying to reach. And if you need better information about your customers and what they need and what will provide value, then you have to go back and do customer discovery. And there is no metric or magic number that's going to change that fact that you need that kind of qualitative data, right? That's why we're all here, because there's no way to replace us.
So thank you so much, Mariana, for being here and for taking a time to actually like put this presentation together and to show us all your knowledge. We actually love to see these kind of like Holly said, like these case scenarios and everything, and to see a little bit more about the inside of WANDR and the inside of the projects that are in. And thank you everyone for being here and supporting like this knowledge that Mariana is giving us. And yeah, it was great. And yeah, thank you everyone, and thank you, Mariana.